Welcome to the second part of the video series in which we explore the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The topic of this part is the Great Pyramid of Giza. In the first video, I examined the pharaoh who built the pyramid, the conditions of the period, and the technical details of the pyramid. In this part, we are ready to enter the Great Pyramid of Giza. I will guide you in the pyramid, room by room. This video will satisfy you if you wonder what is inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. If you don't interest, I assume the inside of the pyramid is very interesting because there are burial chambers, tunnels, cloisters, and canals we don't know their purpose. It's actually an extremely horrible place because we will enter an ancient grave, and some part of the pyramid is really horrible. Pyramids are one of those places who have claustrophobia should not enter. In the beginning, there's no problem because you enter the pyramid through an ordinary tunnel, but the moment when you enter the cloisters you have to pass through narrow corridors. There are not enough lights and the inside is quite dark. It's not a suitable place to go out immediately when you feel claustrophobia. You'll understand better what I mean by watching the video. Let's begin to see what's inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. This video will be an excellent preliminary work for those who want to go. There are 2 kinds of tickets in Giza. One applies to an entire valley, which one is getting cheaper, like Istanbul Museum Pass, or if you don't have the time you can go to the museum which one you want to see and buy individual tickets. For example, the Great Pyramid of Giza ticket price is 200 Egyptian pounds. So the value is approximately $8 American, but if you are a student, this fee is reduced by half. Let's think, you buy your ticket and come in front of the pyramid. You will see 2 entrances to the pyramid. One of them is the original entrance and the other is the pirate entrance. Once upon a time, people carved limestone blocks and opened the pirate entrance to explore the pyramid. This pirate entrance has an extremely interesting history. When the subject is the Great Pyramid of Giza, everything is fascinating. We need to go to the 9th century for this story. The 9th century is the period in which the benefits of the Islamic Renaissance were collected. In this period, Muslim scientists, especially in medicine, philosophy, and astronomy, were extremely advanced. In this age which I mentioned, the Abbasid Caliph Harun al-Rashid's son al-Ma'mun was a governor of Cairo. When we look at the personality of al-Ma'mun, he was extremely curious and an administrator who understands the importance of science. When we examine his caliphate period, we see his contributions to science. He built observatories in Baghdad and Damascus, founded Beit al-Hikmat, House of Wisdom, a kind of university, gathered scientists from different places on the earth like Greece, Iran, Egypt, China, and India, translated Greek and Latin books into Arabic. During al-Ma'mun's period, Baghdad became the science center of the world under his reign. Al-Ma'mun did all of those great jobs and he was a governor of Cairo in his youth. As you can understand, he was extremely curious, and because of this curious personality, he was interested in his environment. Therefore he started to examine pyramids. Because the entrances of these 3 great pyramids at that time and what is inside them are unknown. The pyramids were studied for a long time but the gates were not found. Then al-Ma'mun determined a point north of the pyramid and his soldiers started to dig the point he set. Soldiers advanced by digging limestone blocks. They dug for days until they found a corridor and finally reached one of the corridors connecting the rooms inside the pyramid. So they managed to enter the pyramid. Don't forget all of those that happened in the 9th century. You can still see the tunnel opened by al-Ma'mun and his soldiers today. And this tunnel is called the Hole of Al-Mamun. We have to accept that al-Mamun analyzed the place to enter the pyramid very well. Because the original main entrance of the pyramid is located just above al-Mamun's hole. As a result of intense efforts, al-Ma'mun entered the pyramid and continued its excavation and research activities inside the pyramid. Dark and narrow halls have been researched for days, and as a result of these works, the tomb room on the lowest floor of the pyramid, the Queen's tomb room, and finally the tomb room of Pharaoh Khufu was reached. But very strangely, they discovered that the 3 burial chambers were totally empty. Since al-Mamun and his soldiers entered the burial chambers, there are questions that have not been answered. Some of those questions are, were the grave chambers really empty? Have the graves never been used? Or have the pyramids a long time ago, in the Roman and Byzantine periods, even in the Hellenistic period, even when Egypt was ruled by the Egyptians, been robbed? Or is the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu still in the pyramid? We still don't know the answers to these questions. When you go to Giza today, you enter the pyramid through the door shown in the picture. In old times there were guides waiting at the pyramid gate, and these guides put tourists into the pyramid through the original entrance, but nowadays it is entered through a different door. There is also a daily tourist limit active now. I suggest you go to the pyramid early in the morning. Do not leave the pyramid tour until the last hours of the day. Through this door, we enter the pyramid. After entering the pyramid, you need to pass through a long corridor. Actually, this hallway is Al-Mamun's hole, which I tried to explain a few minutes ago. Nowadays, the pyramid is entered through this corridor. Although this part seems claustrophobic, its progression is more comfortable than the other parts of the pyramid. This tunnel that we are watching now brings us to the original entrance hall of the pyramid. Things change a bit after when we reach the entrance hall. Normally, if you go through the entrance hall, you could reach the burial chamber of the pharaoh and the queen. So it was like this when the pyramid was built and the mummies of Pharaoh Khufu and the queen were passed through that tunnel to the grave chamber. Number 6. But after the mummies were left in the burial chambers, the corridor leading to the burial chambers was locked with 3 large granite stoppers. Therefore, the only way you can go to burial chambers today is the descending corridor. This corridor, like the other corridors of the pyramid, is narrow and low, so it is extremely difficult for it to pass. Also, this corridor is the only way available inside which one after the pyramid is closed. For example, Al-Mamun in the 9th century and Napoleon Bonaparte in 1798 reached the tomb chambers by walking down this corridor. But nowadays we reach the upper floors by using a separate corridor for tourists. So we're luckier. But let's take a look at the lower floors before we examine the upper floors. If you follow this corridor, you will reach the incomplete burial chamber. Pharaoh's tombs and the other pyramids are located on the lower floors, but this burial chamber is incomplete. There's a theory about this room. Khufu may have changed the tradition of the burial chamber after the change of religion. That is, he may have classified himself differently from other pharaohs. Therefore, the construction of this burial chamber may have been abandoned and a new burial chamber may have been built. At some point in the descending corridor there is another tunnel that Al-Mamun explored. Number 12, archaeologists called this tunnel the escape corridor because most likely when the pharaoh Khufu was placed in his sarcophagus and the exit tunnel was closed with 3 large granite stoppers, the priests went out of the pyramid using this tunnel. Today, the escape corridor, which is one used by the priests, is locked. But let's say you used that tunnel. From there you can go in 2 directions. The first option is you can go to the queen's burial chamber and the second one is to the pharaoh's burial chamber through the big gallery. But today, a separate corridor is used for tourists to reach the Grand Gallery. A passage was opened next to the granite stoppers that closed the exit corridor, and today tourists use this passage to reach the exit corridor. In this photo we see one of the granite blocks blocking the exit corridor. But as I said, nowadays, another way is used by tourists. With this stair you can enter the exit corridor. If you look carefully, this photo shows the exit corridor. The end of this tunnel reaches the Grand Gallery, and in this photo, we see the entrance of the big gallery. Although it's not very clear in the photo, but it is a huge, very huge area. If you go up this gallery, you will reach the burial chamber of Pharaoh Khufu, or if you go through from this narrow tunnel, you will reach the Queen's grave chamber. Let's take a look at the Queen's grave chamber, as all tourists do. And let's save the most delicious piece, Khufu's burial chamber, to the end. As I before said, if you go straight without going up, you have to pass through this tunnel. Pass by through the tunnel, you reach an extremely small room. But the tunnel is extremely long, you have to crawl, so this can hurt your knees. When you reach the room at the end of this tunnel, you go through another door and finally reach the Queen's burial chamber. This is the Queen's burial chamber. On one wall of the room there is a very large niche, which one probably reserved for sculpture. As seen in this photo, 2 people can easily fit into that niche. When you enter it, you could feel like a child, but the statue was never placed there. Because you have seen the corridors, it is impossible for a large statue to pass through inside them. You may think that the statue was placed during the construction of the pyramid, but there is no sign of it being placed. This is quite confusing. Another interesting piece of information about the Queen room is that there are ducts on both walls of the room which are thought to be ventilation ducts but do not open to any place. These channels were examined by robots over various years. The first trial was made in 1993. After the robots progressed about 60 meters, they came up with stone slabs called doors with copper handles. These stone slabs were re-examined by robots in 2006. The sent robot pierced the stone slab and sent a camera through the hole to see what was behind it. But 21 centimeters after the first slab, again a stone slab with copper handles was encountered. The purpose of these plates or doors is still unknown today. There are various theories, and the most plausible is that, according to the hieroglyphs in the pyramid, the pharaoh Khufu must open some doors to reach the sky. Maybe these plates represent those doors, but why are those doors not in the pharaoh's room but in the queen's room? No one knows the answer of this question. These were interesting things to see in the queen's grave chamber. After leaving the queen's grave chamber, we follow the corridor and reach the grand gallery again. And from the grand gallery, we reach the pharaoh's burial chamber. The big gallery is quite long. You need to make a lot of effort to see the pharaoh's burial chamber, but it's worth it when you go. Before entering the burial chamber, a small room welcomes us again. The entrance of this room was closed with granite blocks against the grave thieves at Khufu's age. Nowadays these blocks have been cut. The only way to enter Khufu's burial chamber from this room is the small hole in the photo. You have to crouch through here. This is the exit of the tunnel. The entrance of the burial room is here. And also exit of the burial room is this hole again. The burial chamber is extremely simple. But that's the hardest part to build in the pyramid. Because this room is built of granite blocks, each weighing 40 tons, and there is a separate section above the room that distributes the weight of the pyramid evenly. These 5 small chambers were carved from granite. The average weight of the limestone blocks used in the construction of the pyramid is 2.5 tons, but each of the granite blocks used in this room weighs 40 tons. In Pharaoh's burial chamber, just like the queen room, there are channels open 20 by 20 centimeters in size. But unlike the queen room, these channels have connections to the outside of the pyramid. Some researchers think that these channels were open for the rise of the pharaoh's soul into the sky. Apart from these canals, there is only one thing you can see in Khufu's grave chamber, a sarcophagus made from red granite. Tourists love to take photos in this sarcophagus. When you go, you could see a long row of tourists who waits in front of the sarcophagus for a photo. This is a very popular tourist activity when security is not around there. Also, it's possible to see people meditating in Khufu's grave chamber. There's a point I want to draw attention to the sarcophagus. There's a big crack in one corner of the sarcophagus, and it's not a natural one. The sarcophagus couldn't be broken when they were placing it here or broken during construction. Even if they broke 150 sarcophagi, a new one is made and placed here. Because this is a tomb of God, and it has to be magnificent. Looks like someone caused this fracture when they tried to lift the sarcophagus lid. But there is no trace of the sarcophagus lid, of the fracture, or of Khufu's mummy. If you remember, at the beginning of the video I mentioned the unfinished tomb chamber. Also there is no sarcophagus in the queen chamber, no sculpture. Similarly, the burial chamber of Pharaoh Khufu is empty. Some scientists think that Khufu's grave is still inside of the pyramid, and that all these rooms are a precaution against grave thieves. At this point you might think, with modern technology, why do we still don't know exactly inside the pyramids? We have started to study the surface structure of Mars, but why can't we solve the pyramids, which one is 4,600 years old? Let me explain my very own theory. I think the real question is here: can't we solve the mystery, or don't we want to solve the mystery? A few years ago, the Egyptian government banned video footage in the pyramids. All scientists who were studying with robots were deported from the country. And new research applications are rejecting with various reasons. Think the main reason for this is that mysterious things get more attention. If we knew everything about the pyramids today, books containing conspiracy theories would not be written, and movies and series would not be shot. All of these series, movies and books bring millions of tourists to Egypt every year. Unless the mystery of the curtain is not opened, people go to Egypt to find their own truth or to see what they believe. Because of these mysteries, writers, filmmakers, actors, tourism companies, and the Egypt state gain fortunes every year. And customers, I mean tourists, are very happy about this situation and very satisfied. This is my very own theory. You can write your theories in the comments and share them with me. That was inside of the oldest of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and the only one standing. I hope one day everyone who wants to see pyramids go to Egypt and make their dreams to reality.